Okay, now, we talked about the model 16, 17, and 18. That's a collector term. It isn't anything that producers came up and said, well, this is going to be called a model of 1918. That's our choice that we use that terminology. And in 1918, in addition to that last modification that I talked about, we also have another helmet that was devised with a purpose in mind. And if you look at this helmet and you think of a model 1918, you're looking at the rivets are no longer on the sides, those studs that I talked about. And it has all the characteristics of a model 1918, but it has something very, very distinctive. And it's clear that you can see that. And this helmet's been called a number of things. The double dip, the ear cutout, the telegraph helmet, and I'm not sure that anybody really knows. It may have been used for all those purposes, but the main reason they devised this was so a person could hear better. So they actually put that little loop so they'd be able to hear commands and hear what was going on and so on and so forth. So others say that it was the telegraph operators so they could put their headsets on and they'd be able to fit. So nobody really knows for sure. I'm not going to speculate. I'll leave that up to other historians. But my sense is that it was simply for the convenience of somebody to be able to hear with it. And if you look at the interior of this particular helmet, it has a later liner, which we're going to discuss later on. And it also had a decal. And you all recognize that. And I'll talk more about that later, but this is a World War I helmet, model 1918, but a variant of the other. So, now, moving right along. Here is a very interesting helmet. You have a standard model 16 helmet. But this shows you one of the other purposes for those ventilation studs. Now, on the front of this helmet, and think back to the one I told you about initially, the gaiter, and that was meant to protect the person's forehead. Well, the Germans realized that this had a certain ballistic ability to stop a shell, to stop a fragment, up to a certain distance and so on and so forth. But they felt that there were certain troops that needed to have additional protection. And so they devised what's referred to as a frontal plate. And this frontal plate was designed for and issued to two troops, machine gunners and also guards. So the guy that was on guard duty, they felt that he needed the additional protection. And the guy that's behind that Maxim 0815 that's plucking away at the enemy, he's the one that the opposition is going to be going after. And so they devised this frontal plate for additional protection for them. And just to give you a sense of this helmet, I'll pass it around. Okay? Now, once you get to hold that, imagine what it would feel like to wear that for a shift. Soldiers don't have shifts. There's no 4 hours, let's take a break, maybe for days before he's able to take that off and take a break. So, now, in addition to German helmets, the Germans were allied with a number of other countries, including the Austrians and the Turks. And they had special helmets that were made for the Turks, and those are called a visorless. So what you had was, for the sake of conversation, I'm going to use this particular helmet here, which I'll describe more in detail, but you had the basic World War I helmet. I'm not going to call it 16, 17, or 18. You had the basic World War I helmet, but because the Germans respected the religious beliefs of the Turks, and the Turks had to do their religious ceremonies every day. They actually made 5,400, or thereabouts, visorless Stahlhelms for World War I. So essentially, it was the same helmet as you see here, but did not have the bill in the front, or the visor in the front. And you've seen pictures of those, but once again, extremely rare helmet. I've probably owned 30,000 German helmets, and I love them all. But I've never had a visorless I never owned one. I've seen them, but I've never owned one. So a very, very rare helmet and worthy of mention. Okay. Now, another country that served with and was an ally to Germany in the First World War was Austria. And they were an industrial country, and so they had their own manufacturing process. And so they also were involved in the production of helmets. And so this is referred to as a Model 16 Austrian. Certainly the coal bucket style, certainly the same characteristics that we have discussed with the other helmets. In this case, though, if you get to look closely enough, and certainly during the break you're welcome to pick up anything and look at things and ask questions. The rivet setup, the external dome rivet, is much higher on this one. Otherwise, the only other difference is the color. As you can see, this is brown. And so that was a distinctive feature of the Austrian World War I helmet, is that it was brown. And the internal setup is very similar. In this case, probably produced in 1917 or 1918 because it has the liner band is made of a zinc material. It has 3 basic dome pads. And the other characteristic is the chin strap. The Austrians realized that they were going to run out of leather really quickly, and so they used the canvas chin strap. In fact, most Austrian helmets were reissued with an extra chin strap on the inside because they realized the canvas might not last long, and so they actually had another spare chin strap, which the soldier probably quickly lost, but anyway. So there is another Stahlhelm produced during World War I, a variation. The Austrians had 5 or 6 producers, and they produced quite a few helmets too. Worn only by Austrian troops? No. I mean, they're worn by German troops wherever supply and demand dictated, this is where the helmets would be sent.